So good evening, my name is Mary Maslowski. I'm the chairperson of the Harwich Historic District and Historical Commission. We are calling to order the meeting of Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. It's 6 p.m. It's being held at the small hearing room in Town Hall at 732 Main Street in Harwich Center. Before we get started, we would just notify each of you that we are audio and video recording this meeting. And if anybody wishes to also audio or video record the meeting, you would need to let the chair know at this time. So hearing none, we will start with a roll call.
Bob Doan, present.
Brennan Lowney.
Lynn Zalasak.
Julia Eldridge.
Thank you very much. So we have a full board this evening. We have 5 members, so we have a quorum. We will call to order our first public hearing of the night. It is HH 2022-01. Kenneth Gould, owner applicant, proposes a complete demolition of a single-family residence on the property due to damage or destroyed by accident. The home is over 100 years old according to the town's historic property list. The subject property is 588 Depot Street, map 45, parcel J4. So if you could come forward, introduce yourself, and please.
Absolutely. I am Kenneth Gould. I've been the owner of 588 Depot Street for 23 years. My house was struck by a car January 31st last year. And I have 11 days to make it less than a year.
So sorry to hear that.
It's taken down. I'd like to demolish it.
My name is John Lonergan, and I work with J. Olaf Company, builders.
Okay. Let's see what we have. All right, so you are proposing a full demolition, and the house has been condemned by the building inspector?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have any questions from members of the board? Brendan?
Maybe a question for you, Mary and Bob. When it's condemned, where do we stand on that?
So typically speaking, we would
Because,
still,
I mean, the building department could just overrule.
the building department
Yeah.
has the authority if it is a hazard, then it can be ordered. It doesn't seem that that has happened at this point,
It was
although it is
deemed to be
condemned.
unsafe,
Mm-hmm.
was the notice on it.
Okay.
Well, you ready?
Go ahead.
I just have a comment. You know, I did visit the property and looked at it. You know, from an architectural standpoint, I did not see anything significant. You know, it's a very plain, barely any architecture distinguishment at all, kind of Greek revival to some degree. But from an architectural standpoint, I don't see any need for trying to repair or restore it.
Lynn, any comments, questions? Julie?
No.
And Brendan, are you all set?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right. We're in a public hearing. Any questions or comments from the members of the public? Hearing none, is the board ready to close the public hearing?
Yes, I move to close the public hearing.
So motion's been made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Doan, seconded by Mrs. Zalasak. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
All right.
All right.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. So then the chair would entertain a motion on the notice of intent.
I'll move to allow demolition of the property at 588 Depot Street, map 45, parcel J4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Doan, seconded by Mrs. Eldridge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Build something historic.
It's gonna look exactly the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk.
Thank you.
All right, second item on our agenda tonight is the second public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing for HH 2022-02. Kareen Blank, applicant, proposes a partial demolition of the single-family residence on the property to accommodate for an addition to the home. The home is over 100 years old, according to the town's historic property inventory list. The subject property is 265 Chatham Road, map 34, parcel P6. Are you here for the applicant? Please step forward and introduce yourselves to us, please.
Hi, I'm Bill Swanson, I'm the builder.
I'm sorry, your name again?
Bill Swanson.
I'm Tom Wooten, I'm the owner.
Okay. So if you want to walk through your application for us a little bit, just tell us what the plans are.
Okay, so I proposed add an addition to the back. The owners have requested it's an old house, and all the rooms are very small, a lot of small rooms. And all they wanted was one big room where they could gather, so best place I could do that is by adding it to the back. There is no real demolition other than taking the rakes off and then copying the trim exactly on the new gable.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that box window on the back of one of those pictures. That's where I'm going to try to put the door. That's actually a case opening to get into the new addition.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it on the plans. And there's a loft in the second floor, and there's two windows up here. And I was going to try to utilize one of those.
So this is the back where the addition's going to go. Okay. Any questions from members of the board? Mr. Doan, would you like to start us off?
Will the chimney remain? The chimney? Is that going to remain? All you're doing is adding on to the back? It's actually a gorgeous house from
It's
the
really
front.
nice, yeah.
It is beautiful.
It's
It
a
is.
beautiful Greek revival, very well maintained.
So I took care to match the siding.
Mm-hmm.
Because the house was moved once already. That's the second, it has a new foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And they set it on the foundation, and it's 2x6 joists. So, I have to use 2x10, so I have to do a 10-inch foundation with a ledge in order to get, so that it comes across and looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
Try to take good care of keeping the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it really won't be seen from the street other than coming up from the south. You'll see it on that side of the property, just extend
Yeah.
out back, but
Yeah.
looking straight on, you really won't notice it.
You won't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not stepping down the roof line or a new ridge, you're just going straight back.
I'm going attaching exactly.
Yeah, you're going right to
I
it.
saw that
Yeah.
some of the demolition, maybe it was me, I don't know, but I'm just removing, I'm attaching.
Yeah,
Mm.
the siding, the windows, the bulkhead, the rakes,
Yeah.
and coming straight out and duplicating it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions from members of the board? Lynn? Julie?
No.
Any questions from the public? Seeing none, is the board ready to close the public hearing?
Yes.
So the chair would entertain a motion.
I'll move to close the
Thank you,
meeting.
Mr. Doan. So there's a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Doan, seconded by Mr. Lowney. To close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
No.
Hearing none. Motion carries unanimous. Is there a motion on the application for the partial demolition?
Motion to approve HH 2022-02. Applicant proposes to do a partial demolition.
In accordance with the application?
Yep.
There's been a motion made to approve in accordance with the application.
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Lowney, seconded by Mrs. Zelisek. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. You're all set. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Except tomorrow morning. Yes.
So,
Yeah, we were supposed to drop it off.
has anyone had the opportunity to review the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes and place them on file?
Motion to approve minutes from December 15th, 2021, and put on file.
So a motion's been made by Mr. Lowney. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Mrs. Eldridge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. The next item on our agenda is our town planner, Mr. Eidman. Thank you for coming this evening. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I wanted to come in anyway to introduce myself here. I've been in the, the longer history of the town, but I've been the town planner, maybe about 7-8 months so far. That, the impetus to come in was greater or accelerated because there's an issue, I guess maybe about a month or so where, through my work as a planner, I also interact with building permits and assist the building commissioner with looking at historic issues or zoning issues. There seemed to be kind of a misunderstanding on the part of one applicant with what was required of that applicant for the permit they were issued. And, one of the things I identified in looking at it is, and I guess this has gone on for a long time with the HDHC, is the application was one and the same with the written decision that's issued by the board. So I can understand at one time maybe that was done because, on the face of it, it seems like there's a great efficiency in doing that. You don't have to come up with another form, it's relatively easy to use. But you can imagine there can be a disconnect or miscommunication where, often kind of unsophisticated applicants will say, articulate what the work they want to do is, and then the board signs off on it without necessarily changing the description of that work. And sometimes just relying on checking a few boxes here on the application form. So, I'd be happy to come in, subsequent to this and talk to you about broader issues, but, what I've done for you this evening for your review and discussion is I've drafted a few, what I would refer to as template decisions. One dealing with notices of intent and the other dealing with certificates, the various certificates you issue in the historic district, certificates of appropriateness, certificates of non-applicability, and certificates of hardship. And what I've tried to do with them is make them relatively easy to use, even to the extent that all of you could have a copy of it and kind of take notes on it. And ultimately, the decision that issues, if you're comfortable with it, could be, handwritten in a sense. There are some check boxes in it. Some of the information that's in there as well could, of course, be filled in prior to the meeting because it's immutable information, things like the owner and the applicant. I've included things like the registry of deeds information because, according to Chapter 40C, decisions are Mass General Laws, Chapter 40C, which is what the local historic district bylaw is based on. You really should be issuing a written decision in recordable form, at least in the district here. So if somebody wanted to record that, they'd be able to do that. There isn't a corresponding requirement with decisions issued under the demolition delay bylaw, but nonetheless, I've kind of come up with a template along the same sort of The other thing I could do if you preferred this is, of course, the signature page could be on a separate page, so that could be assigned the day of the vote. And then the kind of marked up handwritten copy could get taken back and administratively, typed in.
Typed in.
But I think there is just an efficiency associated with trying to issue the decision or getting a signature on the day that the matter is voted on by the board. Everybody's so busy, it's just difficult to come back in and get the decision signed and that sort of thing. So those two templates are open to discussion. I think the more complicated the matter, sometimes attachments will have to be put to it, say a list of the plans, especially in the district here that are being approved. But in many cases, the work is relatively straightforward, say, siding, that sort of thing. I think that one could be useful in that sense. Of course, if you like how this form is, the other thing I would do, which is relatively simple to do, I would take the decision section of the applications off, which is essentially a box that says approved or denied.
Right.
The other point I'll make is, in the notice of intent template, I think today it says approved or denied or withdrawn. There's an important distinction to draw. You're not really in the position to approve or deny demolition if something is not in the district. What you have the ability to is either impose a delay or not impose a delay.
Correct, yes.
So that change in language is important conceptually because it kind of misapprehends what the jurisdiction is of the board. So of course I've kind of changed that in the notice of intent template. The other document I put forward to you, for your consideration, if you say, for instance, you wanted this on the HDHC webpage, is a demolition delay bylaw flowchart. And this really, the genesis of this was actually working with Patty. And so Patty is really smart and a hard worker, but land use stuff is all new to her. So, I will often discuss historic and zoning issues with Patty as she takes in, various applications. And I was trying to think, how do I take that demolition delay bylaw and try to make it as simple as possible? And it lacks any of the nuance you might want in that bylaw. But this is as simple as I could make it, trying to describe what the board's jurisdiction is, what might be required of an applicant, all derived from the bylaw itself.
Right.
So, if you think something like this flow chart is accurate and helpful, it's something that we could have at the building desk and also have available on the webpage.
So what I like about this is the simplicity of it. What we have had issues with, John, since the most recent list came out in 2015, we have had probably a dozen or so, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, properties that we determined were incorrectly listed on the historic inventory list. They were dates that were incorrect, or it was a there's a house on Schoolhouse that was really built in 1940s, which we determined from deed records that there was a transfer of land and then a transfer of land with the buildings thereon and a mortgage deed. So we were comfortable saying it wasn't a 100-year-old house, so we removed it from the list. So we've had that situation too. So the only maybe missing piece is that if somebody is questioning the 100-year age of the house, we have given the public the opportunity to come before us and present us with information to kind of challenge that listing on the list. So
I absolutely agree, and actually, if you look at the template, it contemplates that.
okay.
Because one of the findings you have to make is that the building is 100 years or older.
Yep. Gotcha.
So, I think sometimes these determinations can become too automatic, but really there's a whole mechanics of, is it a building? Because that's what the demolition delay bylaw deals with. Is it a building? Is it demolition? Is it 100 years old? And, let's get into this a little bit. Age is different than significance. And that, is it significant? According to the demolition delay bylaw, the value of the inventory, which is different than just a list of ages, though the ages may be on that, is listing on this inventory, in addition to some other conditions like association with a noteworthy person, presumes that's a historically significant property. So if you put something on the inventory and that building is over 100 years old and it comes to you, the presumption is that it's historically significant. The burden is then on the applicant to show how it's not historically significant.
And then for us to make the finding that it's not, and to allow the, or not to impose a demolition delay.
Well, the funny thing is, you can, if you find it's historically significant, you don't even have to impose a delay at that point, as you know. You then have to find that the demolition work somehow jeopardizes the value or significance, historic value or significance. And again, these are all in that template. You'll see there's a logic when you go through the template. And these are all findings you should be making, certainly before you impose a delay. It's probably less important, I guess, if you don't impose a delay. But certainly if you impose a delay, there could always be a challenge on it. So these are all findings that are inherent in the bylaw. That essentially allows you to check that off as you go through the template. And also make notes while you're doing it. So if it is on the inventory and say you don't impose a delay, you could put a note there and it says, based on the evidence provided, the testimony provided at the hearing, we determined that though we had this date, the building had been completely altered. Or, something along
Yep, understood.
Something along those lines.
Like tonight, that first one, there wasn't a lot of historic significance to that home. You couldn't even tell what it was.
Right.
Any kind of architectural detail. It looks like a glorified garage that someone put a front door on. So yes, I get it, yeah. Even though it was 100 years older, it really didn't fall, for us to put that demo delay on it.
Well, that's why it's important to distinguish between age and significance,
Yeah.
because they're not always going to be, the same. And, age is a difficult thing because the only source we really have to go by are either the assessor's records or looking at macros. The jurisdiction is 100 years old, it's not the inventory, it's not the list. So, we are on the side of sending them in here if it appears to be demolition, appears to be 100 years old, and that's why you hold the hearings. Because through testimony or through that discussion with the applicant, you can find that maybe it's not 100 years old. That means that the logic of the template I've given you, you don't really need to go through the rest of it. If you find, based on the evidence, that it's not 100 years old, there's no reason then to go through the rest of the findings about significance or even having a basis for finding significance. Of course, you can't impose a delay at that point either, even if you think that there's something noteworthy about the building.
How do we address the like for like? So the like for like replacement is being excluded from this. Is that being dealt with at the intake with Patty on intake? If we're replacing windows on a historic building, like for like is obviously isn't a new vinyl.
Yeah, I want to parse my answer a bit because it's going to be different if it's in the historic district versus whether it's subject to the demolition delay bylaw.
Yeah, so we know that the district is where we have that control.
Right,
If it's 100
like for
years or
like.
older outside the district, we're really, the only thing we can do is the demo delay. That's it. We're not really doing anything else.
Yeah, I totally agree, Brendan. I think there's kind of this gradient where you have some applicants under the demolition delay bylaw who are willing to kind of share their designs with you, and then you're willing to accept those as kind of an alternative to demolition where you might either work. That's the sort of fair discussion you can have with them. But if it just came down to my building's over 100 years old, I'm going to demolish, and I don't want to show you my plans. You really can't say, well, we're not going to act. At that point, you either impose the delay or not.
Yeah, or they could do a continuance if they want to bring back plans.
Well, but my point is you have to act within a certain time too.
Right.
So you can't continue to do that. At some point, if they're kind of recalcitrant, they don't want to do that, You just have to act and either
Right.
impose the delay or not.
Yeah, so for example, back to that little house, if that was a significant house and they had no plans that they were coming, we just want to knock it down and we're going to decide next year, that we would probably do the delay on. That could be one of our, that would probably be the action.
We did that a
Like
few
we
months
did,
ago.
yeah, that,
Yeah,
3 months ago.
right.
right, and it depends. If you're asking somebody to come back, your applicant's, it has to be cooperative. Or else, to John's point, we have to take an action within our statutory timeframe.
Right. And what is that time?
45 days
45
It is
days.
45 days.
from filing.
Right, so they can only do from filing.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
you
we're
also
under a
have to
tight
see how
timeframe.
that aligns with your
Mm.
With our
schedule.
meetings.
We've missed before.
Interesting. So 45 days from their filing.
Yes.
So coming to the next meeting may not qualify.
Right.
May not, it can be extended, but yeah, you need a cooperative applicant, as Mary said. But Mary, let's get to your
Yep.
issue for like.
Sure.
So we're just talking about the historic district here.
Yep.
We're talking about a type of certificate.
Somebody needs a new roof, needs windows.
The way I read 40C is even without, chapter 40C, even without this board taking further action, you can administratively determine that it's ordinary maintenance, no change of materials, colors, and so on. We ran into this trouble, Brendan, with the Harwich Center property
Mhm.
because they just didn't adequately communicate to you that, well, we want to use AZAC. You know, who knows? The board may have felt that's appropriate, but they didn't communicate it. The applicant didn't understand the significance of that. I think to a person, I mean, you're a builder, but
Yeah.
to a builder, sometimes they'll say, AZAC's a better product than finger jointed pine. What's historic about finger jointed pine? It doesn't matter. But it does matter under the bylaw in chapter 40C.
Right.
Because like for like, or ordinary maintenance is only, you know, literally the same material,
Truly
same
like for like.
color. And so I think Patty and I have a pretty good line of communication about that now.
Great.
But you'll see in the template that if somebody happens to apply, even though maybe they didn't have to do that, and you pick that up during the review, that really what they're applying for is a like for like, then you also have the ability to issue them a certificate of non-applicability.
Right.
If you determine that, you know, during your review. Yeah. So the other thing I've done on that template is I've also tried to, you know, include the findings
That's great.
that have to be made for that particular certificate, as well as the types of things, the types of findings or things that come under those particular certificates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. There's kind of a little known, interesting couple tidbits to chapter 40C. And I mean, we probably should have another meeting just going through chapter 40C, because your entire bylaw rests on chapter 40C of the general laws, and it's just kind of one fleeting sentence. But it is, I mean, it's an older law, it's from 1960, it was updated in the 70s. But there are a lot of interesting provisions there. If someone applies, say, someone can apply in the first instance for a certificate of hardship or non-applicability. Or you could also take a certificate of appropriateness and recognize during your review that it might be appropriate for a certificate of hardship or non-applicability, and issue that instead, even without that application having been made to you, or even noticed in that way. So it's kind of that.
So back to
interesting.
this property tonight seems to be like a car damaged at the house, it's condemned. Is that what we're talking about in this, an example? Could we convert it to it? No, different than a hardship.
Yeah, no, like a certificate of hardship, for instance, you can find that a particular action is going to be inappropriate for the district,
Okay.
but nonetheless find that your requirements would be so burdensome to the particular applicant, you allow that to move forward with their certificate of hardship.
Okay.
Even if someone hasn't applied for a certificate of hardship, it's within the board's recognizance to grant a certificate of hardship or non-applicability. Say like non-applicability, something you find out during the review, that something really isn't subject to public view.
Mm-hmm.
You can issue that even if they haven't applied for it or you haven't noticed a certificate of hardship or not.
So,
Okay.
for example, an addition is being added to the back of a house in the district. It can't be seen from any public area. would that be something that would qualify for a non-applicability in that instance?
It's a good, it's a
Or
good
somebody,
example.
or somebody comes through with, we had one on Parallel Street, I think, really all they were doing was replacing windows and the same siding. So we would go through at that point, and instead of checking off, granting a certificate of appropriateness, we would check off a certificate of non-applicability because it was a like for like, and they came before us unnecessarily.
If that's what you determine, right?
Yep.
I'm getting to the kind of granular procedural point that
Mhm.
you don't have to tell them, sorry, that relief's not before us, we
Exactly.
can't grant it.
Understood,
You can.
understood.
So we can, okay.
Yeah, during your, if you determine that during your review, even though the notice had said, you know, Bob Smith has applied for a certificate of appropriateness for an addition to the rear of the property on Parallel
But
Street.
either way, that happens at the meeting. You're not talking anything happens before, from application to this table.
Someone could apply for
Yep.
that, but it also doesn't prevent, if it hasn't been applied for, like, for instance, before the zoning board, if you don't apply for the variance and you haven't noticed something as a variance, they have no jurisdiction to grant a variance if you've applied for a special permit. That's something
It's
special
different on
about
this,
board.
right.
This board does.
And it really feels more like, it seems reasonable, right? Because your notice is about the work being done, and if the work is either, is not necessarily our jurisdiction, so we can make that determination as a part of the actual permitting process.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
So that's great, because I think we have in the past had people make both applications. They've applied for a certificate of non-applicability and a certificate of appropriateness at the same time, so that they were both noticed and
It's not a bad way to
heard one before the other.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to go, and I don't know if you have to break them into separate application. It's just helpful to realize that.
Absolutely.
You don't have to say, oh, our hands are tied.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. These are extremely helpful, and wish you were here 4 years ago.
Well, I'm here now, but I don't want to.
I appreciate it.
I didn't want to use these, Mary, we had a discussion, we didn't want to start using these before the board had reviewed
Understood.
them, had time to look at them, and found them to be acceptable.
Yeah,
So-
let's take a look.
Do
at
any
it.
members of the board have questions for John, or some comments for John?
Just one kind of, we were
Absolutely.
going down the road of the 45 days, and we've, we'll come to a meeting, and for whatever reason, we want to give an opportunity or something, or that they want to come back, and we've done, I guess, a continuance, or.
We
But what
have.
I always felt that we should first actually impose a 1 year, because that doesn't prevent them coming back next month and then saying, oh, no, we've changed our plans, and we can preserve this, and then we can lift it.
But it's a new application for them.
No, that's an excellent point, Bob.
Because,
That's exactly what the bylaw contemplates.
right,
Yeah.
and because I get nervous when we do these continuations, that something's gonna fall behind, through the cracks, like we can't meet, and now we were way beyond that 45 days. So I've always felt we should impose it and then invite them to submit an alternate
But
plan.
are they
or
coming
something.
back to file a new application and paying a fee?
No, because,
No.
I mean,
Okay.
think of the delay period as not a penalty, it's not a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not
Time
like
out.
leverage. It's really for the purpose of having enough time that there can be a discussion, an investigation with this committee to come up with alternatives. Now, during that time, whatever time you set up to a year, the board in discussion with the applicant can come to the conclusion that there really isn't any feasible alternative. That is a potential outcome. But no, exactly what you're saying is what the bylaw contemplates.
Right,
It
okay.
gives the opportunity, it gives the time for
Right.
people to talk.
Right.
I think that's another reason why there isn't an elongated review period.
Right.
Because it's not an approval or a denial. It's are we going to impose the delay? So let's get the information we need, and in fairness, either impose it or not. So
Right.
there's some certainty.
Hmm. Good.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
You
That's
prefer
good.
to.
So in the example where someone comes in front of us and they agree with some of the changes they can make to their plans, they have these, detailed plans from their architect, and they want to go back to their architect and present back to us, are we going to still put the hammer down on the 12-month.
Yeah, I've always feel we
Yeah,
should.
it makes sense now when you think it out, but invite them to come back
Right, absolutely.
and present that, and we can lift that.
Mhm.
But does it have to be within 45 days?
No, we've
No,
already
what-
made a
no.
decision.
What
So
John
it's-
is saying is that you make the decision within the 45 days,
Yeah,
and then they can come back at any time and request that we
Reconsider.
remove the
The 1
the
year.
demo delay.
and we've always had that policy, when we
Right.
tell someone you are having the delay, but please feel free to come back if you change your mind about,
And really, when we've done these kind of multiple hearing dates, it's generally under the premise that they're agreeing to come back, so.
And I don't want to take that tool
No,
away.
understood.
So Brendan, you make an excellent point too, and not to complicate this, but that's a potential. I think sometimes you need to, this is so much of land use, being a former land use counselor, now I deal with planning. You need to read the room. What is that applicant like? Are they a cooperative applicant?
yeah, that's what I mean.
We're not, are you really working towards something?
Right.
Because maybe that's a case, I wouldn't just continue. You want to get some, you want to get the
We want
applicant's consent.
We want the
to
waiver. So we did have a waiver form, or a continuation form that we had in the past that we've,
I just drafted one with Pat.
All right.
I think she has.
So if we get consent, we can exceed the 45 days of making a decision.
it's the applicant
So
signing.
it's still there for us, okay.
It is, and it just depends on what sort of relationship you have with that particular applicant.
Yeah, we've
If
had.
it looks like the applicant is even, pretty, pleasant applicant, but they have if you think that building's significant, they have no idea what they're gonna do. They just say, we don't wanna demolish it. Then, no hard feelings, nothing personal, but we're gonna impose the delay and then let's talk about it. But if you have an applicant that's really working towards an end, and they're almost there, so that you could accomplish that thing you'd otherwise accomplish during the delay period,
Mhm.
then, don't take that tool away from yourselves, but just cover yourself with,
Right.
a waiver and an agreement to continue. And Patty, I did draft one, I think, Elaine gave it to you, so,
Okay,
maybe you don't have it tonight,
no,
but,
I don't.
yeah,
have
we've
it.
worked on that.
Mhm.
So, John, it kind of along your comment of reading the room and reading the applicant, if the applicant seems like imposing the demo delay is gonna really make them shut down, then we wouldn't. We have had applicants say, just impose a delay.
Oh,
I
yeah,
want
that's-
we
Yeah,
want the
that's a
clock to
diff-
start
that's a different
ticking.
That's really
Yeah.
different.
Or we've got the,
Mm.
Mhm.
that kind of situation, so we read the room,
So
but
just so I'm clear, so we do a delay, and they're gonna come back when they come back, how are they coming back to us?
they're coming back and they're gonna go to Patty and they're gonna request to get put on an agenda.
Exactly.
On
But
an
they don't
agenda,
have, they don't have to
refile.
do another
No
application.
application, no fee, they're just gonna present, and then we have to do paperwork on our end to lift that with the building department.
Exactly. The
Okay.
bylaw contemplates that there's going to be, there's no particular template for this, but the bylaw contemplates there's going to be some sort of written agreement between the
Right.
applicant and the board, even if that's, say, a set of plans and some sort of signed document.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
And
it
it doesn't
also
ap-
makes sense that if they've already paid their fee and put in their application and we're giving them a delay, that means that application is still live
Mm.
until the delay period is over.
Now, John, there's no requirement for that to be noticed other than as a part of the public hearing agenda, correct?
It doesn't even need to be a hearing. It would be, if it's a matter that comes before the board, for the board to be able to talk about it under the open meeting law, it
Yep.
has to be in public. So it could just be a public meeting
It'd be-
item. You could make it a hearing, I guess, if you wanted to, but then if it's just a meeting item, it's merely subject to the
48 hours.
posting 48 hours.
And no
Perfect.
issues with the butters having to come back to that? No,
No,
because we've already made a decision,
yeah.
or we're making a new decision.
Exactly, and again, you're not noticing a butters, but if you're hosting a public meeting, there is a way for people to recognize that you're gonna talk about that matter
Mhm.
at the meeting,
Mhm.
through the legal posting.
Oh, true, okay, fair enough.
The other thing I put on the notice of intent template is something that doesn't appear in the bylaw, but I feel, because of its absence in the bylaw, it's kind of fair to treat as a condition. And I know it's an issue you've dealt with in the past. There is no, like, say Chatham, for instance, has a time frame for a determination for a notice of intent. Like, it's going to expire at some point. The thing I'd be fearful about is that you issue a a determination under a notice of intent. And the period passes, and someone hasn't, let's say you haven't opposed the delay, but someone doesn't exercise their rights to demolish. I don't think that should survive forever. You know, the determination you once made. And I think the board has handled it before as and I think you were even given a legal opinion from AP, as an owner versus applicant issue.
Right.
I don't see it as an owner versus applicant issue. I see it as kind of a normal timing issue for how long is that particular determination effective. So I put in there that should be effective for a year. Maybe I would fine tune that. And I was thinking that the delay period could only be for up to a year. Now, usually what happens, because the bylaw suggests this, when you're getting close to a year, you actually come back to the board and they, you know, if there's like a week left, the board says, we're not gonna wait another week, go ahead. And so I think a year is appropriate, but I could come up with some tighter language so that that 1 year effective period isn't necessarily the same as the 1 year demo delay that you might impose. Because theoretically, you could get up to a time, which would be unfair, I guess, to an applicant where the determination's only effective for a year, but you imposed a year delay, and then, you know, a really nasty board could say, year's over, you didn't exercise.
Right.
So now you have to come back. That wasn't the intent.
Understood.
But I do think there should be a time for this determination. It shouldn't just be out there forever, that you got one in 1989, and so someone in 2021 can use that same determination.
And I think that was one of the concerns that
Yeah.
this board had when we were proposing some changes to the demo delay bylaw, was how long it ran and who it ran with, and whether it expired on ownership, and whether, so this may be a good alternative to that as
Yeah,
well.
there's some procedural stuff that would really help. I think it's an excellent idea, getting into that subject, putting in a definition for demolition. I do have to tell you, I mean, I'd be happy to talk about it more. I have real concerns. I think the policy is laudable, but I have real concerns about having a demolition by neglect bylaw. And I know that was once discussed by the board here. When communities have done that, they've made it broad over the entire community. So that is to say, under the building code, you can ensure for life safety reasons that you tighten up a property to the weather, make sure it's not an attractive nuisance. But I'm not sure you can use that as a proxy historic related bylaw. So if you do it for a property, it should really be under a life safety issue, that not just to, I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think you're gonna be able to get to a point where you are gonna be able to protect those corbels on a property.
Yeah,
But certainly you can protect all properties, not just in the district,
Understood.
from becoming deteriorated and posing a public health or safety issue.
And that's
Agreed.
also, I think, working with the building inspector too, as well as, because it's a matter of, I think we've seen some of these buildings not be boarded up. And there are actions that can be taken to help protect those buildings from deteriorating more.
Even
And
if
I-
they're not 100 years old.
Exactly. And
Or
that,
in the district.
and there are actions that if the owner doesn't take, that the town can take and actually charge back to a tax title property. So,
Does that exist now?
It does not exist now, but I think, so what I'm saying is if there was a bylaw that gave the building commissioner some authority to require affirmative actions by an owner to close up a property for health and safety purposes, that wouldn't be an historic bylaw per se, it would be a town-wide bylaw.
Okay.
Under police powers to protect health and safety, and I think you get there kind of obliquely to the historic issue because it would apply to all properties, and maybe older properties are the ones most threatened. But I don't think, it might not pass constitutional or other muster if it is an historic bylaw.
because the historic is really, it's not dealing with
And
the,
then you have affirmative obligations to do things like maintain that historic corbel. Not
Right.
just, I mean, it's probably getting out there on the periphery anyway to say that you need to tighten up the roof, or tighten up the walls, or put a fence around it. But I certainly think it's probably a bridge too far to say that trim is particularly important to us. You have to preserve that trim.
Understood.
Agreed. Okay. Good
So
point.
I support all the other stuff going, hopefully it gets to town meeting sooner than later, especially the definition for demolition. It's
So
critical to have.
It is actually scheduled to be in the warrants as a warrant article this year
Okay.
in May. So we should perhaps talk at some point about any potential changes you think we should be recommended.
Yeah,
Because, it is scheduled to be on, and I think we can address some changes even from the floor if we needed to, if there were things that were truly concerning for its approval.
strategically, I wouldn't want to sink the stuff that's absolutely necessary from the stuff that might be out there on the tangent, like the I frankly don't know of any communities that have done demolition by neglect as an historic and have been upheld. I think a lot of planners talk about it, but nobody wants to be the guinea pig for this sort of thing.
Hasn't Orleans done it? Isn't that through our research?
I don't know if they extended their bylaw, didn't they? They're not,
No, no, Gene found out that Orleans actually has that in their
did
bylaw
they?
by neglect. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it. I can do a little more digging. I think the other important thing to ask, if that is the case, how is it working and how are you enforcing it?
Right.
Because there are an awful
Well-
lot of obligations on the building commissioner there. And we do have a new building commissioner in town, and I know that there have been some kind of difficulties in the past with this board and the building commissioner. And those things should be, healed to some degree, but it's incumbent that on this board and on the building commissioner that there be a good relationship, because you really do rely on the building commissioner for all your enforcement.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So it still comes back to how do we prevent someone from just letting their property totally go to hell to the point where they do have, that the building commissioner says, no, this is condemned, yet it definitely could be saved and it's an historic property.
I think that's where public laws run up against property rights. I mean, I'm kind of jaundiced on the issue. I don't think there is a way to do it. I mean, you're imposing an affirmative obligation on somebody.
Yeah, it's the property rights, that's the issue.
Yeah, look at Bishop's Terrace, right?
Yeah.
No, it makes sense.
As much as we don't want that outcome.
But even a general across the whole town, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I came across a house that was probably built in the 60s, but there was a huge hole and
Right.
squirrels or whoever was going in and out of that place, and it was up for auction. But anyways, it makes sense. Maybe that house would not have got to that condition, So,
Yeah.
But what is the prognosis then for doing a general bylaw for all properties that the town does have the right to secure it and charge back?
Yes, I have known property,
I know.
I've known, a good deal of municipalities who've handled it.
And how do we get there? If that's,
we-
if we take it out of our
We would have
proposal,
to draft a general bylaw. And, you get a template for that, and I could even kind of shop it to this committee first. I mean,
Yeah.
there would be a lot of, because it would be kind of cross disciplines and
Right.
boards, probably a lot of boards would be interested in that.
right,
I do have to, I mean, I don't want to oversell it though. Usually what's required is some sort of, basic level roof coverings. Not, you need to cover the roof. It could result in some, strange outcomes though, like blue tarps on historic properties.
right.
Which, then you have
Yeah.
to balance, is that?
Well, that's probably better than having the big hole in the roof.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's all about preservation. So if you think about what we're doing here, like 50 years from now, someone's going to see the house that we potentially saved in one of these meetings. It'd be the same difference of a house that may not be historically significant, but the charm of Cape Cod,
Right.
even a home in the 50s and 60s, if that's preserved, that's what it's all about. So it's really the same difference, but that's a great idea to do that blanket protection.
I've seen communities do them where you board up the house, the building inspector has the authority to board up the house. When makes the order to the owner doesn't act, you board up the house, you then charge that back to the to the,
Yeah.
to the tax title account.
There's an inherent authority of the building commissioner under the building code for those issues. You know, I don't wanna get off on a tangent, but recently, you all know the Hamblers property.
Mhm.
You know, they had the metal building, and it was flapping in the wind.
Mm,
So
mm.
that's a situation where the building commissioner, the old building commissioner went out. I'm sorry, the interim building commissioner went out and basically authorized the removal of those panels. Same time kind of mandated that the owner do that under kind of the health and safety provision, life safety provisions of the building code. Because it pretty easily could have, these big metal panels
Yeah.
blown into Route 28.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
This is great, John. Thank you very much.
So happy to come back at a point. I think if I came back, what I would want to do is talk kind of more broadly, specifically about a section of general laws, chapter 40C. And I'm not looking to deprive you of jurisdiction, but there is an opportunity there for the board to find that there are things presumed to be acceptable and not have to review them. One of the hidden benefits of doing that is if your jurisdiction is too broad and you have to review everything, you can get overwhelmed by that. And you find that people will look past your jurisdiction, avoid it, because at that point, the building commissioner and the board are doing too much. So if you're finding that you're always approving the same thing, maybe, adopt it as a presumptively acceptable thing, and staff then can issue
Interesting.
that approval. And what 40C does is it gives you a list of things, even without you having to develop them on your own. You can also develop certain things on your own that are presumed to be acceptable, but I think the board probably wants to keep jurisdiction over paint, but there are many communities out here around Massachusetts under chapter 40C that just don't review paint, or they don't review driveways. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm saying that there's a whole gradient of things that you can deal with there. But I think taking some things off your plate that will always be acceptable, a certain type of fence painted white, and saying you don't need to go to the district, you don't need to go to the commission.
Interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
And lastly, before you go, I know we talked about guidelines. Our guidelines are really outdated and taken from another town. And then do you see any need to update the applications themselves?
I think if this form is good with you, I think what I would do with the applications, the first thing I would do with the applications is take the approval boxes off them, because you don't need them anymore.
Right,
Just treat them as applications. And, I want to talk about this with you, but I'm a little uncomfortable in some of the characterizations on the certificate form. They characterize their certificate. When I did this, I went right to the statute.
Yep.
I didn't characterize anything.
right.
There's some characterization in those applications about what the certain types of certificates are that, it's not just that I don't personally agree with them, they're not quite consonant with the statute.
Right, exactly.
So I think I think it would be better just to take them out and point people to the source law, which is the local bylaw in chapter 40C. What you don't want is your application form characterizing something in one way, and then the actual statute saying something
Being the
else.
exact opposite.
Right, so that was my point I had. We had a discussion before this. And the reason why we used to just approve as written or as stated or as presented, taking that information that they wrote and then you're duplicating it. If you left something out, now you have two different, but I understand the decision is, that's what you're recording.
You might not be saying the same thing the applicant has articulated.
Exactly,
Right.
right, exactly. So you might as well hash it out and get it a clean language, even though that's not what they're presenting. They might be presenting something completely different.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the template allows other documents to be attached to it.
Yep.
I think one thing Patty and I have discussed too, and I think she even did this for this meeting tonight, we can get things ready for the board. So let's say for a certificate, let's say for a certificate here in the district, there are a bunch of when you say you're approving something as presented, what it really means, I think, is the plans that were presented to you and the board hasn't made any changes to them at the meeting.
Right.
So let's refer to the plans.
Right,
And so what Patty can do ahead of time is just come up with a document, an attachment, list all the plans or specifications, you want that Benjamin Moore HC paint color on
Yep.
there. And so the list of specifications in place,
Interesting, that's great. Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah.
Where was it? I had one.
It makes sense to go back to the written
So,
word
again-
as opposed to just,
Yes.
The cover sheet that she put on our applications this evening.
Yeah, so I
So-
think it's not exactly what I did, but I think
Yep.
it's a great leap forward from what
Yep.
was done at the.
Absolutely.
But that would look something like the attachment we might put
Yep,
on.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. This is fantastic, John. I thank you so very much for not only coming, but for taking some of this on, because I will willingly accept all the help I can get.
Yeah, no, I'm constantly kind of floored by the fact that having an historic district is such a rarity. There's so much potential and jurisdiction you have, but it's really tough to do if you don't have the support you need. And I don't think the residents realize, the value of having this district here. And in many ways, it's kind of undervalued. It's unfortunately why you see certain uses and certain types of development here where there's a real, there's an economic development model to good development in an historic district.
There absolutely is.
Realized.
There absolutely is. And I think on the flip side of that is I think we have some residents that don't understand the demo delay bylaw in general, and that, the fact that their house is of that age gives them an extra step that they have to go through. So, we like to be user-friendly. I like to think we try to be user-friendly, but these decisions and the application additions are hugely forward to help us do this well,
Well, I think it
as
helps
opposed
the
to just
applicants
getting
too.
through.
It helps
Absolutely.
the applicants too.
Yeah, we want them to
I
have
think
a-
they feel
yeah.
like they're punished if we say, oh, we're gonna.
Right, right.
yeah.
Now, moving forward, I personally think these two are great. Does the board concur? Do we want to start using these as is? Does anyone want to, are there any suggestions that somebody had or for a change that you'd like to see?
You can take your time.
Yeah, I'm thinking like
We'll
next
look
meeting,
at
if
next
we,
meeting, let's discuss it.
if we
yeah.
can have ones that we could use, maybe all of us use them and fill them out as we go through. Next meeting, if we have a couple of, good ones that come in front of us, it might be a good practice for everyone, just to understand the paperwork and what Mary's doing as the chair.
Good point.
And then we can make changes, for next time, and then maybe implement it in 2 meetings, 3 meetings from now.
Okay, we'll take the draft off, and maybe what Patty can do is try just putting some of the general information
Yeah,
in there.
Fantastic.
yeah.
And see how
Yeah,
it
just
goes.
like role play it, but we'll use one of the meetings for the role play.
Yeah.
I like-
And then whenever you would like to come back to talk to us about any of the other topics,
Now, Jen, do
Just-
you need help from one of us to help you with the guidelines, or try to consolidate, or obviously start from scratch? But do
Yeah,
you,
I think it's really something, I'm kind of uncomfortable just doing it kind of in a closet, and I want to work with you on it.
yeah, all right,
So if I need that help, I'd be before you again.
okay,
With some clear direction. I think one of the benefits of doing those guidelines is, I've read them, and yeah, there are some references to other communities. But you also want to separate, in your bylaw, out the procedure from some of the design. So it's not a design guideline document entirely.
Right.
There's also some procedure and legal standards in there.
Mhm.
You don't want your legal standards
Yeah.
in your
design guidelines.
yeah,
Mm.
Yeah, because they're not your legal standard to approve something. I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion about the types of, say, siding materials, and it might be different on an existing building versus a new building.
Right.
Because historic districts don't absolutely prohibit
Right.
newer materials
Right.
or more modern designs.
No.
But those have to be consistent with the district. You're looking
Mhm.
at two things when you're looking at a district, both how that type of construction works on that particular property and how it relates to the district. And it makes a complete difference whether you have an existing building there from 1850 versus let's say a ranch like you saw recently on
Yeah.
Parallel Street from 1960.
or the Verizon building that's in the district.
Or
Yeah.
the Verizon
Right.
building.
Yeah.
And it's very nuanced. That's the other thing that gets kind of difficult in talking with applicants, because it's much more nuanced than I think applicants realize.
Right.
It's not just, what does it look like? It really gets, as you said, Brennan, often to preservation, so it makes the materials important
Mm-hmm.
very often. But again, if the building isn't there to start with those materials, you can, there's more leeway than to use more modern
Yeah.
materials. So with the design guidelines, I would like to kind of break it out more towards, they're really design guidelines and then maybe take some of the legal standards and move them back into the bylaw where they belong, because there's not much in the bylaw today. It basically just says we've adopted an historic district. Also note that your timeline to review certificates is severely shortened from what 40C allows you to do. So when it was adopted, it was changed to like, I think, 30 days rather than 60 days, which 40C allows you to do. Yeah, so that might be something we consider changing.
Might be a bylaw
Other
change
than
we
that,
want
it
to
just
propose.
says, Shall apply 40C.
Mhm.
So in order to understand your own bylaw, you need to be experts in this general, this whole section of general laws.
Another good suggestion, thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Does anyone have any other questions, comments for John? Then I guess I would say when you are ready to come back to us, just let us know.
Okay, happy to do that. It was nice to kind of.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming in, John, I really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Sean, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So the next item on our agenda was to be a discussion about the gas station at 729 Main Street, but we're just gonna put that off because there's no one here.
Oh,
There was
Put it on for
some,
next week?
put it on the next meeting agenda and we'll see if we hear from them. They were going to come in and talk to us about potentially doing a canopy, but
No, I did not reach out to them.
you weren't supposed to.
Okay.
You weren't supposed
Should
to.
I reach out again?
Nope,
Okay.
nope. They had indicated that they wanted to come in and we'd said that they could come in January. And hasn't, so perhaps that's off for now.
yeah.
Is that the little gas station corner of Bank
The one
and
across,
Main?
the one right
Right
across
here,
the street.
yeah.
So the next item on the agenda is the meeting schedule. Which I know I saw it in my packet. But where did it go?
Is that page? Pretty close to the last page, okay. Looked good to me.
Well, it would only be the last page if I hadn't torn through my packet, so.
Right here, yeah.
So those are the exact same ones, but on the agenda I have the alternative dates. That's the one.
So Patty, what are we doing now as far as publications? Our publication deadlines aren't as strict now that, oh, you still are doing in the Chronicle? I'm sorry.
I still have to do.
You publish in the
I
Chronicle.
still publish in the Chronicle 2 days. 2 weeks,
So our deadlines are still really tight.
exactly.
Okay. So if I'm looking at a filing deadline, sorry, Bob, just give me a second. If I'm looking at a filing deadline, realistically, when do we have to publish for a February 16th meeting? Forget this.
Okay, so right now, I have one application for the 16th,
Yeah,
and I have to post by Friday, next Friday, week from Friday.
okay.
So it has to be posted 3 weeks, no, what would that be, 3? No. More.
If you give me 3 seconds, I can run to my desk, I have it all
If
calculated
you could,
out.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That'd be great. My concern is these filing deadlines, right? Because when we're talking 45 days
Yeah,
and
5
30
weeks
days,
prior.
5 weeks is too
Yeah.
far for the 30 days. And, we need to hit I know there's a publication deadline
So 45 days is the day from the filing date to make a decision,
on
Yes.
notices of intent.
notice of intent.
And certificate of appropriateness, I think we just said it's 30 days.
That was really helpful, John.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should ask Patty to work with John on these filing deadlines to see if we can make them a little bit
Mm-hmm.
closer to the meeting date.
Most towns are usually, like, a month out, usually.
Are they a month, a full month?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, usually that is or roughly that.
I bet you're talking February 9th to March 16th. March 16th to April 20th,
Yeah,
you know.
right.
Yeah, there's no recovery if you have a snowstorm or not having an agenda particularly.
Right.
Yeah, so it's really pushing 5 weeks.
Now, there was something on the agenda about other dates on May and something, where there's some conflictions or something?
I had a concern on one of them. Thanks.
So that's the guideline I follow.
Whoa, okay.
Oh my God.
I feel like I didn't need to see this.
Wow.
So I guess my question is, could you maybe write this 5 weeks prior is what's giving me a little bit of concern, where we're talking about our deadlines, our timing deadlines with John earlier. I'm wondering if any of these filing deadline dates can be pushed forward as opposed to being pushed back, where you're saying it's an average of 5 weeks.
Some
So-
are. Yeah.
So I based this
Mhm.
on what Melissa did
I
last
understand,
year.
no, I understand that.
So I don't know the legalities as
Yep.
far as the, days.
Right, and that's what
I
John,
will
and that's what
find
John was just talking about. So obviously, you need a couple of days to get the legal ads done and drafted when an application comes in. But if our timing is cued by the date the application is submitted, then those kind of filing deadline dates, the closer they are to our hearing, the better it is for us, because it gives us more time. We don't want to have a situation where we have 30 days and we've lost the 30 days because we haven't had time to have a meeting. So I guess that would just be a question. Can we look at those? Like the filing deadline
The filing
dates.
deadline,
Yeah.
yes.
As far as the meeting dates, does anybody have any concerns with the meeting dates as they're posted?
I think there was something about May you wanted to change, and
Yeah.
December, those were the two
You were
times you
available
wanted
in
to
May,
change.
Well, no, town meeting that was one thing, right?
Yeah, my town meeting was but my town meeting is the last Tuesday, Wednesday in April, but it's the week following the April 20th date, so I don't have an issue there.
So the May 18th,
May 18th is a Wednesday? Yeah, because I think the 17th is I have an
They're all
election,
Wednesdays.
we all have elections on the 17th, I think Harwich does too, so don't think that's a problem.
That's the state
was it
election,
the
yeah.
17th or the 11th? I have 11th in right, but it could be the 17th.
I thought Harwich was the 17th.
It could be, no, you're probably right.
I could be wrong too, it's entirely possible. Dates look fine with me.
Yep.
The Christmas week one,
December 21st?
yeah,
That's a tough one.
I think that's
It's doable, but
that one's the questionable one. We could probably move that up a week I think,
I'm fine,
I'm just looking at
might
the
just be
dates.
September if I travel, but I can always call in like I did in November.
Well, I mean, the notion is that, you're allowed to miss a meeting too. I
Yeah.
mean, we're all volunteers, we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, I already know I won't be here the June 15th.
I'm just looking at December. Yeah, December 20th is actually, 21st is the Wednesday, Christmas would be the following Sunday. So I don't know if it makes sense to try and move the December date up a week to the 14th? Or do people
Yeah.
think that you can make the
I can make the 21st.
I can
the
make it
21st or
They
change it to the
probably
28th?
And we could always see if there's any applications,
Yeah.
right?
So then why don't we, if we think we're okay with these now, obviously we can always make changes to them going forward, but that's the only one that really jumps out at me.
And the March
16th?
16th, okay. Oh, 1, 2, 3, I thought it was off, okay. Yeah, that works. Yeah, I think I'm good for all of those.
And April 20th would be what, April vacation for,
It may be April vacation. Yeah, because that's Easter week.
That is big, yeah. That would be, yeah, I wouldn't be able to.
And March 16th is smack dab in the middle of the month, so.
Yeah,
What's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to approve these?
I'll make a motion to approve the public hearing dates that are presented.
Second.
So motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none. Motion carries, and we'll just take the note that if something comes up for anyone, just let us know and we'll see if there's something we should change.
Excuse me, Lou, did you second?
Let's see, next item on the agenda is Bob, the proposed property study.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
what the heck?
Oh, that's beautiful. As if on cue.
I can't stop it.
There we go. That was a nice little introduction, Bob.
Yeah. Look at the list.
Look at the list.
So this is the list that's, Lane just ran off for me this afternoon. These are the ones from the 2015 benchmark till 22, which is when we agreed to do an update. So this is the, how many need to be studied, and Form Bs need to be started on them. So, and these, I think, would be the ones we can give to Sarah
Quartet.
or Jeff, to see if they would be able to do some of these or all of them
Okay.
under their new program.
Have we heard anything more from her on that?
I have not, and I haven't either called her either, so
Okay.
I gotta, now that I have the list,
Awesome.
I can do that. So we've got two things. We get this list to catch up, and then I still have the 50 on our current 100-year list that never got Form Bs
Okay.
done on them. And the thing is, I have not been able to yet figure out which 50 they are.
Oh,
So I have to study the two lists and the
Okay.
book and see. Pat, do you know, did we have the book, you know, the big book of all historic properties that were the volumes?
it was a 3 or 4 volume set.
I don't have that.
These.
I do not, but I remember you both talking about it on the first, and I think Elaine made a notation that it's in the computer,
Well, that's what I wanted to
but
find.
it's not,
It,
it's not
these,
printed out.
no, but these are available online. They're just PDFs.
Yes.
You can get them online, but I didn't know if we had the original computer files, whether they were delivered to us in PDF or in Word documents.
We had a set of them and they were given to CPC because CPC asked to take them.
Right, but those were the printed ones.
Those are the printed ones.
Now I'm talking about the original that we've posted, what online, whether we have the original discs that they came
We
in.
must have
I'll
the,
talk to Elaine. 'cause I
Yeah,
know
Elaine would have
remembers
handled that.
Doing it
Yeah.
and talking about it. But
Hmm.
we never took it to the next step because
Right.
we weren't sure what needed to be done
Right.
with them.
I
Right.
think I think it was on a flash drive.
I think
if
so,
memory
too.
serves.
Yeah, but I'd just like copy of the basic, but they may be PDFs, which I
Right.
pulled out anyway, so. Of course, PDFs are a little harder, you have to convert them back to Word to do
Right.
good searches and stuff there. Which I have the software to do that if necessary, it's just big.
Unless they're put up on a laser piece with an OCR.
Is that right?
If they're OCR'd, you can search them.
Yep. So really, that's the next step. And then whatever Sarah can't do, then we gotta do up a proposal or request for proposal.
And move forward with
Yeah,
the CPC
just-
funds at that point.
Yeah.
Great. Are you comfortable reaching out to Sarah Cordup to?
Oh,
To
absolutely.
move forward? Perfect.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. No.
Perfect. And I did discuss with administration, what we needed to do, contract-wise or whatever. So when we get to that point, if we need to sign something, we can just forward that on to the administration office.
That's right, yeah.
So. It's fantastic, Bob. Thanks
And
for doing all
And
that work.
Brewster sent theirs.
Oh, did they?
Well, but the thing is, they just sent the legal documents, the contract, not the actual proposal, the detail of what to
Gotcha.
do, so.
Gotcha.
Great.
But it's to do Form B. The only thing we probably can't do at this point is the historic portion of it, where the
Yeah.
the history part of it. Do
Understood.
the architecture, but the history part, and unfortunately, you need that in order to truly get it in the Macris database.
Understood.
Wow.
Well, thank you for that. Any other questions about the inventory?
No.
You had given the update to CPC
Yeah,
anyway.
I'm sure
and we-
another one's
yeah,
due any moment.
in May, I think.
Yeah, yeah, so
I think
probably.
I think it's May. Any other reports from commission members? Bob, we're starting CPC on Thursday, right?
Yep.
Tomorrow. Already, Thursday.
No, is it tomorrow? Yeah, it is, that's
Today's,
right, yeah.
today's the 19th.
Yep, it is.
I did a double take there for a second. I was like, oh, it's really tomorrow.
It's crazy.
3 meetings in
Yeah.
2 days. Isn't that fun? So yeah, CPC continues next week. Any other reports from commission members? Anything else you have?
No, nothing. We were working on that Exchange Park, but that had to evaporate because it wasn't well defined enough to go before CPC, and jurisdiction issue, that's really the Recreation Department.
Understood.
So we were supposed to follow up with the Recreation Department to get
Alright.
them to do something. That hasn't happened yet.
All right. We can note that for sometime in the future
Yep.
as a reminder.
Mhm.
Brendan, any reports?
Not really. I mean, the Affordable Housing Trust, we have a meeting at the end of the month. We just had a really good one with the Housing Committee, which was very productive.
Meeting number 1 of the day.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're moving along.
Anything else anyone has? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Motion's made
Second.
by Lynn, seconded by Brendan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. We are adjourned.
Sweet.
Patty, could you turn us off?